Okay, switching gears here. Exciting news for Toronto sports. First, there was hockey, and now women's sports in the city is about to get even bigger. Sources reporting the city is getting its very own WNBA team. For more on this historic news, we bring in our Lindsay Dunn, of course. Lindsay, we can already tell how excited you are about this news.
Absolutely. I don't show this often on TV. I always wear two necklaces every day. I either wear them as a necklace or a bracelet. One is of my late father's initials, and the other is a WNBA logo. So to say I'm ecstatic is an understatement. I can't believe I get to say that Toronto will be getting a WNBA expansion team in 2026. CityNews confirming through multiple sources that this will in fact happen, and they'll be playing at Coca-Cola Coliseum. This is such a huge moment, not only for basketball, but women's sports in Canada and around the world, because to put it into perspective for people that may not follow the WNBA closely, there's only 12 teams. There's not a lot of, other leagues in North America for women to play basketball in. So next year, they already announced an expansion team in the Bay Area in San Francisco, then Toronto becoming the 14th franchise. That is more positions for players to play in, and you have to pay credit to the players that came before, the Kia nurses, Natalie Achonwa, Bridget Carlton, that are in the WNBA, like the first Canadian to ever play in the league, that being Kelly Boucher. And you have Tammy Sutton-Brown, who's a two-time WNBA champion, Canada Basketball Hall of Fame inductee. This is such a huge moment, and I just want to say it one more time. Toronto is getting a WNBA team.
Can't say that enough. Massive news for the city here. Lindsay, you had the chance to speak with the WNBA commissioner not long ago about a potential expansion. What did she say back then?
Yeah, and just last weekend, we saw Edmonton host their first preseason WNBA game, which was only the second WNBA game ever held in Canada. And then a year before that, Toronto, like you mentioned, held that historic moment where you saw Chicago take on Minnesota, which hosts Canada's own Bridget Carlton. It was an electric environment with the merchandise selling out before halftime in the arena. And I did ask the WNBA commissioner just over a month ago why Toronto seems like it could be a good fit for an expansion.
Obviously, last year we were thrilled with the way Canada and Toronto specifically, but I would say the country responded to having our first ever game there. And, globalizing the game is an important part of our strategy. And given that Canada is our neighbor to the north here in the US, I think the success of that game was amazing. I mean, I can't tell you, just me having been there and walk in to see close to 20,000 people the night after the Maple Leafs played there and lost, by the way, unfortunately, but to like wake up the next day and have an early game and have that place packed, and still thinking of that vibe last year.
Okay, Lindsay, we're seeing a lot of growth in the WNBA. They already announced, like you mentioned, another expansion team that will start next year. But what makes Toronto a good fit?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there are other cities that they looked at. Hey, it could be Montreal. Edmonton is a huge basketball hub, or even Vancouver. We've seen such a growth of basketball within the last decade in Canada. When you look at the Olympics alone this year, Canada is sending both the men's and women's team there for the first time in 24 years. But we all know Toronto is a huge basketball hub, the great access to the facilities there as well. And when you have a place like the Raptors and the training facilities, that also adds to why Toronto would be such a good spot. But this is specifically what the WNBA was looking for when it came to an expansion team.
From an expansion perspective, I mean, what we're looking for in any city or market we're talking to is a committed ownership group with a great arena situation, practice facility, player experience. Because you see in our free agency coming off that 2020 collective bargaining agreement, free agency is real now in the WNBA, and there's a lot of player movement and star player movement and player movement that leads to a championship, like when Candace Parker. Maybe there's more than these two super teams that have been and talked about last year who ended up in our finals. So really excited.
How exciting for all of us here, Lindsay, and I'm sure you're going to be following this story, and we're going to get back to you as soon as we learn more. Thank you so much for this report.
Anytime.